Good morning and welcome to the Biz Tech Show, Hillel. You're the obvious guest on the show because I don't know if I told you, but it's your idea that I get on YouTube and speak to people and give over ideas. And I've really been doing also some interviews. This is our third interview, and I'm super excited to have you on. This is really cool. I really want to jump in and ask you because everyone's talking about innovating in Israel, but very few people talk about, and I think you're the person for that, about what it actually looks like to build and operate here day to day. So from your perspective, what's actually unique about building in Israel?
In terms of business, I think there's, a very entrepreneurial environment here. I think the government has the innovation authority, which basically sponsors startups, gives them grants without equity. Generally speaking, I just feel like, I guess, historically or culturally, the Jewish people have always had to survive. And, right now we're home. And so we have this kind of excess energy, let's call it, and we use it to change the world. And so there, the army is a very innovative body that teaches, kids at the age of 18 how to innovate. And so there's a lot of different components. Obviously, there's a lot of literature on this question, starting with Startup Nation, the book. But I don't think it's one specific thing. I mean, there's many components that facilitate and encourage entrepreneurship in Israel.
Saying it's both the mentality, right? Like thinkers, we're good in our brains, right? And the environment and also the government that's encouraging it, as well as the army. That's also a lot of people leave the army with a lot of experience in tech because the army uses a lot of tech. So all this together is building this huge ecosystem.
Right. Correct.
And what's unique about it?
What's unique about it is that Israel is a country smaller than New Jersey in the worst neighborhood on earth, the most unstable region on planet Earth. And really, Israel has every excuse in the book to just exist, to just survive, let alone, build startups, forget changing the world like we are. Yet, despite all the challenges, despite all the terror, despite all the wars, despite everything, Israel not only delivers, but we continue to deliver and show no signs of slowing down. And it's pretty miraculous, I would say.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I don't know if people realize how much of their technology is really coming from here.
People have no idea. That's the truth. I mean, if you're using an iPhone, when you unlock your iPhone, that's Israeli technology. The chip in the iPhone is built in Herzliya. If you're using Google, a lot of that's built in Tel Aviv. You're using Microsoft Teams, all the AI is built in Herzliya. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Obviously, USB was invented in Israel. Instant messaging was invented in Israel. Really, you can't survive 5 minutes in the modern world without using Israeli technology in one way or another.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So what does it actually look like on the day-to-day on the ground over here?
I mean, we're paradise here, like I'm not, belittling or dismissing or denying that we're in war, and there are challenges, obviously. But at the end of the day, if you come here and look around, you'll see that this country is one of the most beautiful countries in the world with some of the happiest people in the world. And again, we have to overcome these challenges. But sitting in a cafe in Tel Aviv, you wouldn't even feel like there's a war going on whatsoever.
And you think that's because the environment is so beautiful, or is it also like the resilience of the people?
It's both. I think again, the Jewish people have a supernatural level of resilience because of everything we've endured throughout the generations. But it's not only that. I mean, I think it's actually ingrained, built into our DNA. And the reason I say that is because even back in the days of the Torah literally says that the more the Egyptians persecuted the Israelites, the more the Israelites flourished. This is an actual verse in the Torah, not the commentary, not the Talmud, literally in the Old Testament. And that's counterintuitive. What do you mean the more they persecuted the Jews, the more the Jews flourished? That doesn't make any sense. And the answer is that's our story. That's always been our story. And if you look at today and you look at the actual data, and you'll see that there's a direct correlation between terror and innovation, meaning the more they terrorize us, the more terror we endure, the more we innovate. And that's a real statistic. It's not an abstract thing. The more, we have to survive. And, today we're fighting an existential war on 7 fronts. And yet Israel sold, to Google. Google made its biggest acquisition ever in its history of an Israeli company. Apple acquired another Israeli company whose founders were the same founders Apple acquired last time that invented Face ID. And you see, NVIDIA tripling their presence in Israel. You're seeing every big successful company in the world doubling down in Israel, and Israel breaking records across mergers and acquisitions, across large rounds of strategic financing and many others. It's pretty incredible to watch. And so again, we have to win this war. We have to face these challenges and overcome them. But as far as tech is concerned, Israel is not slowing down. Quite the contrary.
Yeah, but you have these pictures of people like building their startups from different interesting places where they need to be with the circumstances. What to you differentiates between, we have these huge acquisitions and we have a lot of medium solid companies and then so many people actually trying? What differentiates between the startups and companies that succeed and the ones that fizzle out?
I mean, there's endless answers to that question. There's endless literature on that question. What makes a successful startup? I can tell you my personal experience. First and foremost, when you meet an entrepreneur whose job it is, whose mission it is to sell the company and make a lot of money, I can guarantee you that startup's going to fail, guaranteed. Right? If that's your end game. Sorry.
Because there's no real mission. They're not really solving a problem.
Right. If what they're doing is chasing money, it's never going to work. That's number one. Number two, something that I found most entrepreneurs skip, and it might be the most important thing that you do in the life cycle of a startup, is competitive analysis or market research, right? Many entrepreneurs, and I understand why they do this, but they're super passionate about their baby, about what they're building. And so they just want to run with it. They just want to get funding. They want to go to the press. They want to announce it. Dude, slow down. Who are you up against? Who else is trying to solve the problem that you're trying to solve? And if your answer is no one, then we have a bigger problem. Then we have a bigger problem. Like, you think no one else is trying to solve the problem? Well, then maybe there's no problem, right? And so not knowing who your competitors are, increases the chance of failure significantly. Whereas if you sit down for a month doing a real comprehensive, competitive landscape, including, by the way, companies that aren't necessarily doing the same thing as you, but are targeting the same target audience as you with the same value proposition. If you put together a landscape, like a map of all those companies, then you have a lot more clarity. Should I continue? Maybe I should shut it down. Maybe I should pivot. Who else has tried this? Why have they failed? Why have they succeeded? This is all information that is crucial to the success of any company. And again, most entrepreneurs skip that part. There are many other tips, I guess, that we can give.
That's really interesting, because I've spoken to a lot of people and they're like, no, I know my problem much better. As a product manager in many companies, you're like, okay, so tell me more about your users, more about the problem. And they're like, I know this is the only problem. I've got no one to speak to. It's like I don't know where it comes from, but it's interesting that you see it. Do you have an example of a concrete company that changed or pivoted or succeeded because they took that time? I think also comes with being humble, like, let's learn, that did that stage and it changed the course of their company?
I mean, offhand, I'm trying to think of an example, but the reality is that, like, a pivot is maybe the most important and most crucial step when a company realizes that that they're up against many other competitors who failed or who succeeded. Nothing comes to mind offhand, but I'm reading a book again. I'm reading a book by Adam Grant called Think Again. Adam Grant is one of my favorite authors, wrote Give and Take, which is something that I built my whole career on. But Think Again is exactly this. It's like, if you're taking a test and you select an answer and then you go back and erase it and select another answer, what does that look like in terms of, like, statistics? Statistically, are those people usually wrong? Are they right? When you think again, you reconsider. Usually, generally speaking, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's an incredible book. But there are so many examples of companies.
Could there be two sides to it, like the people that jump ahead without thinking again and the people that are constantly thinking again and never moving forward?
Yeah, 100%. I'm just trying to think. There was a company that I met recently that, like, totally pivoted, and I'm trying to remember what it was. It will come back to me. But I meet companies like this all the time that, like, they were doing one thing and they completely pivoted to something else. I mean, I don't know. I could give you one example, but it's a little bit of an extreme example. But one of the most exciting companies in Silicon Valley for the last decade was a company called Magic Leap. And what they did was mixed reality. So we all know virtual reality. Many of us know augmented reality, but they are mixed reality. And it's a very interesting thing. And the technology, they were heavily funded. And it was like, the promise of everybody was going crazy over it. And when I tried it, it was actually insane. It was impressive as heck. But they realized that like, no, people don't necessarily want this. It's too expensive. And so they completely pivoted to the enterprise world and no longer sell to consumers. And that's
So
like
it's
a
like
major.
a cool concept, but it wasn't actually solving any real problem that people are willing to pay for.
That's correct.
So they're
yeah,
still using the same technology, or they changed that as well.
they're using the same technology. I'm assuming they tweaked it a little bit for the enterprise world, but they completely pivoted the company from consumer to enterprise.
What are other things that get companies stuck?
I mean, I think, listen, first of all, I'll just say that there's no rules to startups, right? Anybody who tells you do ABC
Right.
and you'll become the next Google is just lying. Like, it's ridiculous. But I think there are things that I would say if you don't do them, you're pretty much doomed to failure. And it's just things that I've encountered over the years and kind of realized that it's a pattern. I'll give you two examples because they're, I think, very relevant to most startups. So the first, let's call it rule, for lack of a better term, that I guess formulated over all these thousands of meetings is I call it the home run rule. The home run rule. What's the home run rule? If I have an app and I come to an investor and I say, here, try the app, and the investor starts to drool because it's the most beautiful app they've ever seen, that's your home run. You've executed to perfection. You built an amazing product that people love. That's a home run. Great. Let's say I come to an investor and I show him my app and he says, it looks okay, nothing great. So yeah, but I launched last week and I have 100,000 paying users. Whoa. Now my traction is my home run, right? Let's say I come to an investor and say, here's my product. And they say, it looks okay. How many users do you have? And I say 5. I'm like, okay. Yeah, but the guy who built Gmail joined my team. Whoa. Now your team is your home run, right? Or I have no product, I have no traction, I have no team, but Eric Schmidt invested in my startup. So now my investors are my home run. Something has to be a home run. For an investor to take out a checkbook, you can't have, an okay product, okay market, okay team. Something has to be wow. Otherwise,
it has to be above average.
Right. Something has to be like a wow moment, right? So every startup, in my opinion, has to have at least one home run. And if you don't have a home run, then perhaps consider waiting to raise money till you have something that is a home run. And the reason that is because if you think about, let's call it the venture capital mechanism or the tech investment mechanism, we know this, 95% of them fail. And investors have one goal and one goal only. And anybody who says otherwise is lying. The investor's goal is to return their money to their investors, period, full stop. Some of them say, I want to change the world. Very nice. They have to return their money to their investors. And so what your job is to convince them that you're not part of the 95%, you're part of the 5%. And how do you do that? By showing them what your home run is. So that's your job as an entrepreneur, to convince that investor that you're part of that 5%. So that's the first rule, a home run rule. The second rule that I tell entrepreneurs all the time is the nodding your head rule. And I call it the nodding your head rule because your job at the beginning of every meeting, and it doesn't matter if you're meeting an investor or a journalist or a potential strategic partner, it doesn't matter who you're meeting. You have about 10 seconds at the beginning of the meeting to get the person to nod their head. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you could start off the meeting by saying, we've developed an algorithm that like the meeting's now over. Like, the person could be sitting with you for the next hour, but the meeting's over. You lost them. Or let's say I'm building a chip for my luggage so that I don't lose my luggage in the airport. So if I come to an investor and say, we've developed a low energy Bluetooth 5.0 IoT, like, we're done here. Or I could say to the investor, you remember how you landed in the airport yesterday and you were afraid you're going to lose your luggage? Yeah. You see what you did with your head? You just instinctively nodded your head because I understand that problem. So you get them to nod their head. And then your answer to that is, well, we cracked that. I don't want to hear about your algorithms. I don't want to hear about the product. I definitely don't want to hear about the technology. Describe the problem, get the person you're sitting with to identify with that problem, and then declare that you've cracked that. And then that investor or that partner presumably will say to you, okay, tell me more. You got my interest, tell me more. And then you go more in depth into what you built. But to start off with the solution, and this happens to me literally every day. I sit with an entrepreneur and the beginning of the conversation is, we've developed blah, 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 blah. Let me show you, let me demo it for you. I'm like, dude, whoa. Why are you building this thing? Yeah, like, slow down. Tell me why I care, right? And so something that entrepreneurs do, and again, it's understandable because it's their baby, is they focus on the solution. But don't focus on the solution, focus on the problem, because technology doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't. If you think about every winning company across the board, they didn't have any proprietary technology. What did Facebook have? It was a website. What did Twitter have? Nothing. What did Uber have? Like, what? A GPS button? Like, none of these companies had technology. Now they're obviously scaled and they need technology to maintain. But at the time, they didn't have any proprietary technology. None of the companies that won, Airbnb, There's no technology there, right? You know who has technology? Old school companies, Intel, IBM. We know how relevant they are. So technology doesn't matter, right? Technology can be ripped off. What can't be ripped off are two things. One is a brand, meaning something that people care about. It doesn't matter if you have $5 in the bank or $500 million. If you build something that people genuinely love, you can't copy that. And you also can't copy traction, meaning if you build this thing and people love it so much that they're downloading or they're using it and they're sticking to it, right? The retention is high. You can't copy that, right? A perfect example, obviously, is Google Plus, right? Facebook dominated the market, comes along Google, and they're like, we'll spend billions of dollars competing with Facebook. It's not going to work. It's game over. Like it's you're hitting up a market that's done, right? So, nobody cares about your technology. Products can be stolen. Build a brand that people care about, build traction. That can't be copied, or at least it can't be copied easily.
I think that's really important now, what you're saying, that what differentiates is the marketing and the traction, because today more than ever, it's easy to copy any idea, right? We always said, like, there were these companies that were scared that people would copy their idea. I'm like, any developer could just build it. But what makes you different? It's not only the technology. And today, when any guy who's not technological could sit at their computer and at least get 80% done almost overnight with AI, the ones that are going to stick out are the ones that have that retention, that have that marketing, that are paying attention to the users and not just thinking like, okay, what can I build? What could I do tonight? What could I vibe code? Right? Are you seeing that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I give these two examples, I think, to illustrate that point. Let's start with, are you a watch person? Do you like watches?
Enough that I hopefully will understand your example.
Okay. So if you go over to a person who knows nothing about watches, okay, walk in a cafe and ask some random person, who knows nothing about watches, what is the top watch brand in the world? 99.9, right? Everyone will say Rolex, like everyone across unless they're an expert in watches, in which case they'll say AP or Patek or other things. Ask any person what's the top watch brand in the world, and they'll say Rolex. Now, anybody who knows anything about watches knows that that's not even remotely true. Like, they're not the top watch brand by any stretch of the imagination. They're up there. They're a great brand. Don't get me wrong, but they're not the top watch brand. So then why do people perceive them? Pure brand. Okay. Again, they have a good product, but they
have the best branding.
Right. So that's one example. I'll give you another example. If you walk over to anybody over the age of 45 and you ask them, did you have a BlackBerry? 8 out of 10 of them will say yes. Then you ask those 8 people a follow-up question. You say, did you like your BlackBerry? 100% of them will say yes. 100%. Anybody who owned a BlackBerry loved their BlackBerry. BlackBerry was a revolution. Like, I took me years to go from BlackBerry to iPhone. Like, everyone who had a BlackBerry loved their BlackBerry, literally without exception. Where are they? They're gone. How is that possible? They had such an amazing product. Where'd they go? The answer is a great product is not enough, right? So it could be branding. It could be adapting to the market. There are many reasons why BlackBerry failed, but the reality is they had an amazing product, but an amazing product.
They did well for their time, right? And then they didn't actually move forward.
That's right. I mean, they could have easily, it's there's a movie about it, right? Like, Jobs came out with the iPhone, and very famously, the CEO of BlackBerry is like, nah, no one wants that. People want a keyboard. And they're like, no, you don't get it. The iPhone's gaining traction and taking over the market. And like, no. The real people are going to want a keyboard. And his people are like, dude, people don't want a keyboard. He just wouldn't listen. He wouldn't adapt to the market. And that's, what led to its ultimate downfall. But my point is, a good product is just not enough. Without marketing, like the whole, if you build it, they will come. People are going to hear about word of mouth. Dude, come on. Like, it doesn't work like that. You can build an amazing product. It can be the best product in the world. But if no one ever heard of it, then what's that good for?
Right. So that also takes us back that maybe they weren't connected to their users, right? People were gaining traction to new technologies that they weren't adapting. Have you looked into that?
I mean, I think, again, amazing movie about it. Listen, I mean, there's kind of like a trend of like keyboard phones coming back. There's companies that build keyboards to work with iPhone, but none of them are succeeding because it's ridiculous. Like, it just is ridiculous. Okay, do I miss the physical clicks? Yeah, I love that. I genuinely love my BlackBerry. But like, if I look today and I do like an actual like contest where I type faster on my iPhone or on a BlackBerry or even on my computer, I infinitely faster on iPhone. Why? Because I've done it. I've learned and I've spent so much time doing it. And you could slide. You could do all the. So I don't think that there's a need for physical buttons. And, those who want it are really like a small little niche of people upon which you cannot build a successful company.
Like legacy.
Right.
It's like a legacy product.
Yep.
Interesting. Where are you seeing AI in your world?
That's funny because, AI is, everyone's like, oh, I'm building an AI company. That's like saying I'm building an internet company. Like AI is in
That's
everything.
right.
There's no such thing as a technological product today without some sort of presence of AI. Some have heavier presence, some have lighter presence, but AI is in everything. AI is not a vertical that stands alone. Again, I'm comparing it to the internet because I think there's a lot of comparisons. I think when the internet came out, it was a tremendous revolution that changed the world, and that's what's happening today with AI. I don't think we're at the peak yet. We're getting there. But AI is in everything, and people may not even realize that. Like an iPhone, right? Forget for one second Siri and whatever, and Gemini, and like everything on the what's autocorrect, right? Autocorrect on iPhone is using artificial intelligence, right? AI is everywhere. So, I don't think it's it's accurate to say that it's strong in one place or another. What is important to say is that everyone's worried, oh, it's going to replace human beings. First of all, every time a new technology comes out, that's what people say. Right? When the tractor came out, farmers freaked out. When the internet came out, encyclopedias freaked out. When printers came out, the printing industry freaked out, right? It's because we're scared of change. But at the end of the day, like all those other technologies, AI is going to be net positive for humanity. It's going to bring more good than bad. That being said, much like the internet, there's going to be a lot of bad. There already is a lot of bad, people abusing it. But the one thing people don't understand, and this is dangerously important to understand, people talk about, oh, AI is smarter than humans. No, AI is not smarter than a human. AI is smarter than humanity as a whole. Because if you think about, the trajectory, right? I think, as we get older, our brain deteriorates, right? Our brain gets less sharp. We get dumber or whatever you want to call it. Whereas AI, as time goes by, gets smarter. So like, even if we're here now, like it's going, what I'm saying? So like the delta is going to be tremendous in a matter of a couple of years. AI is going to be, like I said, smarter than humanity. And that's a little scary, if I'm being totally honest, especially if we don't put in some sort of like, I don't want to say regulation, but some sort of controls and stops and things. I don't know. I don't think we're taking it seriously enough.
Yeah, on the one hand, people are not taking it seriously enough. And then you have a lot of companies and founders and business owners that know that AI is the future. It's here already, but are embracing it on the one hand and their mindset, but are not really sure what the next step should be for them because AI is moving so fast. They're like, where should we be hiring? Where should we be investing? What should we be building next? By the time we finish building it, it might be irrelevant. So in a way, people are sort of stalling, like waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I think it's true. And, my son started an AI course yesterday and I'm like, I don't get it. Like by the time you finish the course, AI is going to be completely changed. But I think that there are fundamentals, like the ability to learn how to prompt AI. It doesn't matter if it's ChatGPT or Gemini. Prompting is a skill that you need to learn. There's no question about it. But I think, regarding the statement of AI is going to replace humanity, AI is not going to replace humanity. What will happen is that humans who use AI will replace those who don't, right? It's like the people in the early days of like, and by the way, we know this, it happened the internet. Why would I post things on social? Why do I want people to know where I am? A cell phone? Why would I want to be accessible at all times? A camera on a phone? Who wants to take pictures? Every single time we're like, no. So, if we don't embrace AI, like many of us didn't embrace social media or the mobile phone or the internet, then yes, we're going to be replaced. Those that use AI and who understand the power of AI are going to replace those who don't. And by the way,
and what should those people be doing?
Right.
The people that do want to embrace it in their business.
So I'll tell you, I'm doing a master's degree right now in Ariel University.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because some professors are like, no AI, like do this assignment, no AI. And then there are other professors are like, by all means, like I'm not telling you, use AI, don't copy paste from AI, but absolutely feel free to use AI as the line to start from, the starting line. And that I think is the right way to go about it. You can't beat it. Like, teachers who say no
like
AI.
it or not, they got no choice. They're going to all be catching up within 5 years or 5 months.
That's right.
So that's in universities saying they're allowing now to use it.
Yeah. I mean, again, there are those that are embracing it and they're the smart ones. And there are those who are rejecting it and thinking they could fight it off. But again, it's like fighting off the internet. You're not going to win that battle.
Right. So if for example, I'm not, but if I was a founder that has a company that's been profitable for 5 years, we had a product that was relevant 16 months ago, and we want to pivot because we want to utilize AI. People are going to start using AI instead of our product that's in SaaS. Where should we be going? What should we at least explore?
I think you should explore building those two things that I mentioned before, brand and traction, right? I think,
Really
AI,
invest in
focus on brand. Like people, that sounds like such an abstract, unfortunately, sounds like a BS word because there are so many, people in the industry of marketing that are shysters. So you got to know what you're doing. But, I think given the tools that we have at our disposal, namely the internet and of course AI and social media, there's nothing stopping even a solo entrepreneur, one person who has no funding in the bank. No one's stopping that person from starting to generate industry content, from engaging on social media, from reaching out to journalists and getting some press coverage. Like this stuff is elementary, and this is what builds a brand. And there's really no reason. In the olden days, whatever, 10 years ago, that was really hard. Like good luck, getting press. You have to hire a PR agency. Today, everyone's accessible, right? And so another thing, when it comes to PR, big misconception is like, in the early days of my career, like when I would pitch a journalist and they'd write the story, I would then email them a follow-up and say, thank you. And 100% of the time that journalist would respond to my email by saying, thank you. And I'm like, why are they thanking me? That's weird. And then it occurred to me, journalists have a quota. They have a certain number of articles they need to write. And so when you give them a story to write about, you're doing them a favor just like they're doing you a favor. They're not doing you a favor by writing about it. They're writing a story, which is their job, because you gave them a great story to write. And so if you're a company that has a great story, then just do a little 30 seconds of research, choose, I'm just giving an example right now. Look at Forbes and see which authors at Forbes wrote about the vertical in which you operate, and just literally hit them up on Twitter, on Facebook, and email, whatever it may be, and say, listen, here's the story. No, superlatives. We're revolutionizing the world. Dude, slow down. Let me, as the journalist, decide if you're revolutionizing the world. Tell me the story. And so if you do that, you can get press without hiring a PR agency and paying tens of thousands of dollars. Social media, you have a keyboard on your phone, use it. Engage with people on social media, right? Not the media part, the social part. Right? Most people use social media as a media, meaning as a broadcast platform. Like, oh, look at us, we're amazing. No one's interested in following a company that talks about themselves all day long. But if you use it as a social platform, aka engaging, that's when you build relationships, and that's when you build the brand. And so, I think when you're building a company today, again, start off by that competitive analysis. The next step you should take is actually, and this is something I don't think anybody else says, but I found to be very helpful. After you've done competitive analysis, make yourself a deck. Now, what's the deck for? Not necessarily for an investor. It could be that you're not raising money right now. So why do you need a deck? For yourself? Because if you're able to take this massive vision and this massive go-to-market and this technology and this product and everything that you're trying to do and distill it into 10 slides and communicate it effectively, you're in good shape. But you'll find that most entrepreneurs, when taking this big thing that they've built or trying to build, try to put it into 10 slides, they fail.
They don't have that clarity.
Right. And so by building a deck, it gives you the clarity that you need. So that's the second important thing. And then as you build your product, and this is a massive misconception, people say, oh, I have no product, I can't do marketing. That's ridiculous. Once you have a product, you need to have the audience, right? Why does Apple announce the iPhone and only a month later put it in stores? Because it hypes it up, right? One should start marketing. Now, not product marketing. Yeah, but not product marketing because you don't have a product yet. But there are things that you can do in marketing, again, social media, content, PR, other things. You don't even have to talk about the product, but establish this company. Yeah, and establish this company as an authority in the space through this content. And so you should be starting way before. Once you have the product, once the app is in the App Store, you need people waiting to download it. Starting to market it now, you've missed the train.
Too late. Yeah. So really, it sounds like what always matters even more now that we took the technology out of the operations and it became so much easier. It's still a process, but it's easier. Everything else becomes more important. The marketing, the research, the analysis, the funding, all that matters way more than anything else.
100%. Because the product is easily, anybody could code now. It's not a differentiator at all.
Not anymore. Yeah. Hillel, thank you so much. If you could leave our listeners, business owners, leaders, founders from all over the world with one message, what would it be?
I mean, it's a little cliche, but it's worked for me. When everyone's focused on taking, whether it's monetizing certain things or whatever it may be, taking, focus on giving, right? And I don't mean this in I'm a philanthropist, and no, I'm not talking about giving because you're an idiot. I'm talking about giving as a business model, right? Just to give a very, very basic example. This just happened. A year plus ago, I met an entrepreneur who really had a cool product, cool company. And I wasn't working for him. He wasn't paying me, but I thought it was a great product. And so I introduced him to Forbes, who wrote an article about him that then led to significant investment or company or money coming into the company. And I didn't ask for anything. It wasn't even discussed. I was, whatever. I introduced him to a friend of mine at Forbes. I was happy to do it. My friend at Forbes was happy to write it. The entrepreneur was happy to get it. Everybody was happy. I lost nothing. I sent an email. A year and a half later, 2 weeks ago, I get an email or a WhatsApp from this entrepreneur who I've not spoken to in a year, who says to me, listen, now we have money. What are your terms? Let's work together. Now, in most cases, if I was like everyone else, we would have to negotiate. It's like, oh, I'm going to do A, B, C, D, F, G. Let's talk about the price. Let's negotiate. But if you have already given, you've already delivered, there's no negotiation. So the flow of any business model, it doesn't matter what you're selling is, you make a promise, say, I have the best sushi in the world. You monetize that promise. You pay for that sushi. And then I hopefully deliver on that promise and the sushi's good. That's how most business models work. I flipped it. I said, deliver first. You, as the recipient of whatever it is I'm delivering, understand the value because I've delivered it. And then when you realize, you need me, I have the leverage. You need me. I don't need you. There's no negotiation here. You want me. Here's the price. There's no like, what are you going to do for that? You've already experienced what I've done for that because I did it already. And so any entrepreneur, and it varies the type of company you are, what exactly you're giving. But if I'm a lawyer, instead of saying, to an entrepreneur, I'm just giving an example right now, I charge $500 an hour, just end of discussion. Okay, then you could be like every other lawyer. Or consider maybe working with a startup on equity, or even further, even more extreme, consider giving an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours of your time for free, no strings attached. Now if I'm a lawyer and I'm representing you sit with me for whatever, 5 hours, and you're like, holy cow, this guy, I want to work with him because he knows his stuff, and I clearly can count on him to deliver. Why? Because I already cares
about me.
Right. Because I already showed it. Right. And so this is very counterintuitive, and 99.99999% of people will never do this because it requires a long game. But I can tell you that there are companies that I helped literally 10 years before they reached out to me and offered me, equity or money. 10 years. I'm not joking. This is a Silicon Valley company that I always loved. I just loved the product, and I always promoted them, not because they asked me to, because I loved the product. And after 10 years, the CEO writes, but he goes, all right, it's time. Like, you've done so much for us. Here's some equity. I want you to be an advisor of the company. I didn't ask for it. He realized what I'm worth because I demonstrated it. And so any entrepreneur should ask themselves, am I giving or am I taking? Because no one likes takers, not in life and not in business. Focus on giving. And I think once you focus on giving in a very logical, counterintuitive way, the more you sell, meaning the more you take, the more you sell, the less you sell. The more you market, the more you give, the more you get. It's a real thing. It's not, abstract. I mean, I'll just end with my favorite Seinfeld scene of all time. Telemarketer calls Seinfeld and he's on the phone. He goes, we'd like to offer you 50% off your phone bill. And he's like, oh, you know what? I can't really speak right now. Can I call you back? And the telemarketer's like, huh? He goes, give me your number and I'll call you back. He goes, I can't give you my number. So Seinfeld's like, oh, you don't want me calling you at home? Now you know how I feel, right? No one likes to be sold to. No one likes to be sold to.
Funny every time.
Yeah. And if someone feels like they're being sold to, then they're not buying. Whereas if you're doing a good job marketing, AKA giving, whether that's content, whatever it may be, then the decision of that person is infinitely shorter. And more importantly, the retention is infinitely higher because they made the decision. You didn't decide for them. When I make a sales call, I'm deciding for you, and therefore you might buy. But if I'm selling you a can of Coke for 99 cents and tomorrow Pepsi comes and says, I'll offer you for 98 cents, you're out of here. You have no loyalty to me because I made the decision for you. Whereas if I do a good job at marketing, you make that decision. When you make that decision, the retention is just automatically higher. So always focus on giving.
Wow. And I think you're a real model for, I remember the first time I reached out to you, you're always super accessible. And so you're really leading by example. And I hope that's integrating into our culture everywhere. So thank you, Hillel, for your time now and always. How could people follow you?
Any platform you want. I mean, I'm very active on everything. Twitter, I would say I'm the most active. I post a lot. Facebook is probably, if you want some of my content, Facebook's probably the place to go. Just search for my name.
Awesome. Thank you, Hillel. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right. Take care.